Hello, church. Thank you for joining me today, and thank you for all your prayers. Pam is still in the hospital recovering from her heart surgery, but it's coming along well. It's just been 4 days since her surgery. And you are going to be having some other men share with you on Sundays, and they're going to be talking about Daniel. And today I'm going to be talking about chapter 3, Daniel chapter 3. It's probably one of the most famous stories in the Old Testament. Second only to Daniel in the lion's den when you think about Daniel. I can't really count the number of times that I've sung or watched the VeggieTales version of this story. The bunny, the bunny. Oh, I love the bunny. Now, that doesn't make any sense to you if you haven't seen VeggieTales. This is such a crazy story of God's intervention that it almost seems unbelievable. How can 3 God-fearing men survive being thrown into a massive, overheated fire pit? The truth is, it all started in chapter 1. Now, do you remember when Daniel and his crew made a resolution not to defile themselves by eating the food the king offered them? It was at the very beginning of their service for a secular heathen king. God brought them into a particular moment of time to serve God in the service of this ungodly king. And instead of being just like everyone else, they decided to stand out from the pack and continue to follow God. So, by the time chapter 3 comes around and King Nebuchadnezzar has built this massive statue, golden image of himself that everyone was to bow down and worship, Daniel and his crew, they weren't going to do it. They would have nothing of it. They don't pay any attention to it. Follow God in the small things so that when the big things come around, you will be ready. The Christian life has many dynamics that seem completely foolish to the world. I think this is because God is massively above and beyond us. Can't really think like he does. If following him doesn't cause you to stop and think how certain things work together, then you probably haven't been a Christian for very long. You haven't seen God's hand moving. Isn't it a contradiction what Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego tell the king? They say, "My God is able to save us. My God will, but even if he doesn't." If our church, and if you personally really believe that, we would be unstoppable. They are so confident that God has the power. They know he parted the Red Sea. They know the story of Jericho. They know about the manna from heaven. God has historically proven himself to these guys. They don't doubt God's power in stopping events from happening. Now think about the worst event that has ever happened in your life. Now, if God couldn't have stopped that from happening, he's not God. He let you go through it. But he is God, and he didn't save them from having to go into the fire. They have a ton of confidence in God's power, but they also have a strong faith that he will deliver them. But what if he doesn't? Then you have to see the last piece of the puzzle. Trust. They say even if if God doesn't, we aren't going to bow down and worship a false god. We already passed on the food you gave us that was devoted to your idols. We are definitely not backing down now. And if God doesn't save us, then we still trust him. There's 3 ways God acts when we face trials. First, God can remove the trial so we don't have to go through it. Now that's a win. Second, God allows us to go through the trial and is with us every step of the way. That's also a win. Third, God calls us home to be with him. Now that's the biggest win of all. King Nebuchadnezzar thought they were foolish and that he was winning when his command to throw them in the fire was being carried out. He was all proud of himself. He couldn't have been more wrong. Despite the evil that was happening to the 3 guys, You could not take away their trust. They trusted God whether Jesus met them inside the furnace or met them inside of paradise. The trust was the same. I want to be that kind of person. Those types of people will change our world. Confidence, faith, and trust. I hope that all three of these qualities are increasing in all of us.